to rein in Donald Trump's basically free pass to continue these military, I would say incursions, but apparently they're excursions in Iran. That effort failed. And so can you explain why that failed, especially in light of the fact that Americans overwhelmingly disapprove of this war?
Right. It failed for exactly one reason. Republicans, virtually all of the Democrats are lined up and say, look, we've read the Constitution. We get it. You have got to reel back in on bombing in Iran and starting your own war. But the Republicans, once again, have just blocked it. They're just fine with Donald Trump spending $1 billion a day to blow up stuff halfway around the world, even while people here at home are paying more for groceries now, paying more for gasoline. They're going to be paying more for anything that gets transported in a truck. And on top of that, because of his other policies, his tariff policies, his energy policies, they're paying more for housing. This is the man who said he would lower costs on day one and he would not start foreign wars. And he has gone back on exactly both of those.
Well, the Republicans are all pretty aligned in coming forward and saying, we have to do this because, Iran has been a threat for 47 years. And the only thing worse than this would be the impending nuclear attack that would happen at the hands of a nuclear armed Iran. And so what would be your response to those folks?
Look, if the real problem was Iran getting a nuclear weapon, and I want to be clear, I do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Barack Obama's team had negotiated a deal with Iran. There were inspectors on the ground. It had limits on what Iran could do. Donald Trump comes in, really gets to me. He tears it up. And do you know what he gets in return for turning Iran loose from these constrictions on getting a nuclear weapon? Nothing. Zero. Not a thing. So he tears the deal up just because it had been negotiated by Barack Obama.
Right.
And so then Iran starts developing more nuclear capacity and spinning out nuclear materials and so on. And so Donald Trump tells us, when was it? 6 months ago, that U.S. bombers had completely obliterated Iran's capacity to develop a nuclear weapon. Okay, so Trump puts back in motion their ability to develop a nuclear weapon. Then he says they completely obliterated it. And now that's the excuse for having bombed in Iran starting 46 days ago, is that somehow Iran was on the threshold of developing a nuclear weapon. Look, Brian, in a sense, you're dignifying these ideas that they keep throwing out. Well, this is a reason. Well, if that didn't work, maybe this is a reason. Well, how about this other thing is a reason? This is not only pretextual, it's just totally upside down in terms of how it fits with reality.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, this has been a longstanding pattern where you have these neocon warmongers who conjure up some counterfactual that's impossible to prove otherwise, and they say, well, if we don't do this thing that I've decided I want to do, and this goes back to the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I mean, if you don't do this, then we're going to be in imminent danger, and of course, it's impossible to disprove because there's no way to because it's just a threat, a promise from these people, and there's always going to be some rationale like that where if you listen to these neocon warmongers, there's always going to be some impending risk, and again, that they can say onto some military interventionism or adventurism in the Middle East, then you're going to be responsible if and when everybody dies as the result of our inaction.
Yep. The Republicans have been able to do two things in this century, and this is when Bush is president and when Trump is president, and that is they cut taxes for rich people and they start wars in the Middle East, and that doesn't make America better off. It doesn't make the world better off.
So on that point of this not making America better off, you had mentioned that this is costing $1 billion per day. I'm curious, from the folks that you've spoken with, your Republican colleagues in the Senate, the political zeitgeist right now, they're not ignorant to how unpopular this war is. They're not ignorant to how much everything costs. They're not ignorant to the fact that this administration's failure to deliver on its America First promises is kind of wreaking havoc at the ballot box on all of their colleagues and all of their Republican candidates. Is there no, I mean, I'm not asking you to get in the heads of these people because that would be, I think increasingly difficult, but is there no ability for these people to reconcile watching what's happening to these Republican candidates who hug Trump and the increasingly unpopular MAGA agenda while also enabling that very agenda by virtue of votes like these?
Yeah. You've put your finger on it, but it's the question we've been asking for a year and 4 months now. Is there no place that these Republicans in Congress will draw the line? Brian, the whole U.S. Constitution is set up. We all talk about the separation of powers, but there's an unspoken part to it. And that is that the president will protect the powers of the administration. The courts will protect the powers of the courts, and Congress will jealously guard the powers of Congress. And the moment we find ourselves in now is that the Republicans in Congress know exactly one action, and that is bow down to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
No matter what Donald Trump says, no matter how counterfactual it is, no matter how much damage it is doing to the people of the United States, no matter how much it's driving up costs, no matter how much it breaks the law, no matter, if Donald Trump says it, the Republicans in the Senate and the House bow down and say, yes, master.
What could we do domestically? And I feel like I'm going to ask you a question that Donald Trump himself in 2024 could have best answered here. But what could we be doing with the more than $1 billion per day that Republicans are currently spending dropping bombs in the Middle East?
Well, for openers, we could make sure that all the people who got pushed off their health care because of that one big beautiful bill, you remember, you and I talked about that, big tax cuts for the billionaires and pushed 15 million people off their health insurance. We could actually make sure people have health care and health insurance that they can actually afford. We could be making those investments right now here at home. We could be making the investments in childcare. So mamas and daddies can go to work and know that their kids are in safe, bright, cheerful places and that childcare workers are being paid a fair wage. We could be making investments in helping people deal with student loan debt.